Good afternoon, and welcome to another episode of OpenShift Outdoors. It's actually been a while. It's been a very long while. Summer has come and gone, and I have been slacking in this particular hobby of mine and haven't posted anything for a while. So today I'm going to post a fairly short video to demonstrate and answer some questions about a topic in OpenShift Dev Spaces that has come up from time to time. I'm your host, as always, Charo Groover. And today, what I'm going to show you is the resiliency in an OpenShift Dev Spaces environment that is running on a highly available OpenShift cluster. Okay, what you're seeing in front of you is a 3-node OpenShift cluster that I've got running in my home lab. It's using the same gear that I run my single node clusters on, but this one is running in a high availability manner. This is more information than you want or need, but it is set up in a relatively nerdy way in that each of the nodes is on its own independent power supply. And I have an external iSCSI provisioning storage area network that is providing the persistent storage for this environment. That is itself also highly available and resilient. So this is mimicking in a small scale what a real environment would look like in a local data center or through a cloud provider. So imagine each of the 3 nodes that makes up this OpenShift cluster running on its own availability zone. So it's got its own network, it's got its own power supply, it's on a resilient backplane. So I can easily suffer the failure of one node. But if that happens, what happens to my workspace, right? My workspace is not highly available. In fact, if I show you, my workspace is a single pod. And a single pod can't run on multiple availability zones at the same time, right? It's just a singleton by very nature, so it's running on one of the hosts. In this case, it happens to be running on control plane 0 in my cluster. And so what I'm going to show you is what the experience feels like if I have a running workspace and something goes wrong, and what my experience is like as a coder when something in the infrastructure goes south. All right, I have here a running workspace, my little Che demo app. That is the demo app that I've used on numerous occasions to demonstrate some of the capabilities of OpenShift Dev Spaces. And in this, you can see from my source control extension right here that I have no uncommitted changes, okay? So I'm going to say right up, that's your first line of defense, right? Think of your local workstation. If you drop your local workstation in the toilet, well, maybe not in the toilet because it probably wouldn't fit in your toilet unless you have a very small workstation. But let's just say something catastrophic happens to your workstation, right? You not only lose whatever code or documentation or files of any nature that you happen to be working on at that time that you hadn't yet committed to your Git repository, but you also lose the entire configuration of your workstation. When you get that workstation replaced or you fix the parts, you're now at the point of recovering all of your configuration. Whether that's from a backup or it's from a fresh install, it's now on you to recover that entire thing. I'm going to show you how with dev spaces, that is not the case, especially if you are disciplined in committing your changes at reasonable intervals to your source code management system. Right? So, without further ado, let's create a new file here. And I'm going to call this file my current work.markdown. Okay? And start typing some stuff. This is a new file that I am working on right now. Okay. I haven't committed this file to Git. I've only saved this file because in the background, unless I explicitly tell it not to, Dev Spaces is automatically saving my work as I type, okay? So this file is saved in my workspace. Now, while I have this file open, I'm going to come back over here as the cluster administrator to this cluster, and I'm just going to brute force destroy the pod that is my workspace. All right. And I'm going to quickly tab back over to where my running workspace is so you can see what happens when a situation like this occurs. Now, why might this occur? Okay. This might occur for an innocuous reason that your cluster is just running an update. And as it's updating, it rolls through a cycle of rebooting each node. Your workspace happens to be running on one of those nodes, and it's not going to get any special treatment. It's going to get restarted and reallocated to another node, just like any other pod running in your cluster. Okay, this could also happen because an availability zone goes out, has an issue, and the cluster recognizes the fact that the node is now offline for whatever reason. It will then also reschedule the pods that it knows were running on that node to surviving nodes in the cluster. All right. So there's a lot of reasons this could happen. So let's just pretend something bad happened and the pod that is our running workspace went away. And there it's gone. I'm going to keep typing. Okay, you see that failed to save down there right there? It just recognized that there was an interruption in my workspace. But you can see um, even my typo is still there in this file. So I'm going to click the retry. I'm going to click the retry. I'm going to click the retry. Okay, it's unhappy. Uh, I'm going to correct my typo because this isn't the end of the world, and I'm going to look to see what's going on. I'm going to click this retry again. Okay, well, maybe I can save as. No, something's not quite working right here. Okay, so I can, worst case scenario, download this file. All right, so there's my current work. I just saved it in case something was amiss. And you can see over here that everything has gone away. So I'm going to do what I would normally do in a web app situation. I'm going to refresh and see what the heck is going on here. Well, look at that. I refreshed my browser and everything came back. Can I keep typing? Why, yes, I can. Let's compare real quick. Let's open up this text.markdown. Well, looky there. It was the same thing. Okay, so my work was saved. What actually happened here? All right, this was annoying, but it wasn't the end of the world. In fact, to show you it wasn't the end of the world, because you can see now I've got this uncommitted change here, I'm just going to close this tab. I'm going to look over here. Hey, you know, in my dashboard, my workspace is still running. So what actually took place? Well, I'm going to stop it just so I can show you that when I restart this, everything is still going to be there. Restarting my workspace. And if I come back over here to this console while all this is doing its thing, you can see here, there's my workspace pod. It's going through its init cycle. There's second init, pod's initializing, pod's running, 3 of 3. Is my workspace back? Hey, my workspace is back. Not only is my workspace back, but the file I was working on is also still there. And so you can see, through an interruption, my workspace remained intact. Now I'm going to do this again, but this time I'm not going to go back to the workspace tab. I'm going to stay over here in the OpenShift cluster so you can see real quick what actually happens. See, I'm going to delete this pod again. Did you see that right there? I delete the pod. There's the terminating workspace shutting down. And you can see in the background, another pod is already firing up. And in fact, is now back up and running and ready to take this work back. See, again, I'm going to have to reload this window because it caught the error, but there it is. My workspace is still alive and healthy. It had to reconnect the web sockets because those got terminated, but it's resilient enough to be able to do that and pick right up where I left off. And there it is with another running pod. You can see it restarted on the same node because I didn't actually kill that node. But if it had been unable to reschedule on that same node, the deployment that's backing this workspace would have just asked the scheduler to put the pod on another node that was still alive and well. So there you go. My workspace can survive outages. Now, let's say there's something catastrophic that happens. Well, in a catastrophic event, if I lose the cluster, or I lose access to the cluster and it's going to be long enough that I'm not going to be able to get back online on the same cluster, well, at that point, this is a different scenario because this work that I have in place is not going to still be there, right? I didn't commit it. But remember, the nature of these workspaces is such that all of the configuration for the workspace is stored in two places. One, my source code management system, because the dev file, which defines my workspace, and the code workspace file, which defines my VS Code configuration, those are all stored in my SCM. The second place that the configuration is stored is in the container images that contain all of my tooling that I need for this particular workspace. So in the worst case sort of scenario where I lost access to the cluster, what I would need to have from my organizational perspective is access to another OpenShift cluster that I can log into as a developer and continue my work. I'm going to delete this workspace that was sitting there that already had the same name. And so in that situation where I log in and I've got to get back up and working really quickly, all I have to do is initialize the workspace in the same way that I initialized it in the very beginning when I first created it. I take the link to my SCM that contains the tooling for this particular workspace, i.e. the dev file, and I create and open a workspace from that dev file. And you'll see here it's going to go through the bootstrap method for starting up a workspace that you've seen if you've seen some of my earlier demos on OpenShift Dev Spaces. I'll click over here to the events so you can see stuff that's going on here. Last stage, it's pulling that Che demo app, it's pulling the Postgres, and boom, there's my IDE back up and running. It doesn't have the file that I was working on that I hadn't yet committed. So I did lose some work, but I didn't lose everything. And in fact, you'll see when this little blue clock here finishes ticking away, it's even going to restore the VS Code configurations that I had in place. We'll give this just another minute here to finish doing its thing, and there it is. It's like magically I was able to pluck a brand new laptop out of the air when I dropped my poor old laptop in the toilet. We won't talk about how or why that might occur, but you know, sometimes things happen. So there you go. I hope this was helpful for you and showed you a little bit of the resiliency. In the future, I may do a few more of these, build a larger cluster. I probably won't take a sledgehammer to one of my nodes because they are expensive, but we might abuse the cluster a little bit more with some network failures, DNS failures, things of that nature, to show you how different scenarios can trigger the resiliency that's built into an OpenShift cluster. All right, well, that's it for today. I hope you have a pleasant fall, and I'll see everyone later. Take care.